Venezuela has lodged a formal diplomatic complaint with 4 European countries accusing them of meddling in its affairs. Venezuela's foreign minister was responding to widespread criticism of President Nicolas Maduro around Europe. We want to have the best relations, not only with Germany, Italy, Spain and the United Kingdom, with all the countries on planet Earth, but they should be founded on respect towards our sovereignty, respect for Venezuelan democracy and for the functioning of its institutions. Caracas has also been criticized over preventing activist Lilian Tintori and wife of detained political leader Leopoldo Lopez from travelling to Paris over some cash found in her car. However, other opposition figures have made it to the French capital. They include the President and Vice President of Venezuela's opposition-governed Congress, who met France's President Emmanuel Macron. Congress President Julio Borges said afterwards, the support of the world's democracies and the protests by people in the streets are two forces which will help make the outcome a democratic one. The two men are set to visit other EU capitals, including Madrid, London and Berlin later this week. The southern United States is bracing itself for a second powerful storm to hit in as many weeks. Warnings have gone out to islands in the Caribbean as Hurricane Irma gathers strength. In its path, with winds of up to 215 kilometers per hour at the West Indies and Puerto Rico, Irma is due to hit Florida in a few days.
Hurricane Irma is gathering strength and has been upgraded to a powerful Category 4 storm. According to Reuters, hurricane advisories were issued for territories that dot the West Indies, including parts of the Leeward Islands, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. A Category 4 hurricane means sustained winds of 130 to 156 miles per hour with catastrophic outcomes, including uprooted trees, downed power lines, water and electricity outages, and significant property damage causing uninhabitable conditions. Irma is now packing 130-mile-per-hour winds, and the National Hurricane Center expects the storm to reach southern Florida on Saturday. The NHC cautioned that it was still too early to forecast the storm's exact path or what effects it might have on the continental United States, but warned of likely effects to hit some areas by later this week.
President Donald Trump is expected to announce on Tuesday that he's scrapping a program to protect deportation immigrants who entered the United States illegally as children. DACA is thought to protect some 800,000 young men and women from deportation and allows them to work and study legally. Many of those affected have never known any other home but America.
Well, I mean, just right off the bat, right now, my heart is like sunk. I don't feel any emotions. I've been dealing with this for weeks now, and the uncertainty is it's killing me at this point.
The U.S. President's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, will not be enforced immediately, giving Congress 6 months to draw up alternative legislation. However, sources close to Trump also warned that he could change his mind about DACA and Obama-era policy, the fate of which has been described as a tug-of-war between left and right. Many Republicans and several prominent business leaders say the so-called Dreamers make important economic contributions, and that ending the program would hit growth and tax revenue. But critics argue that illegal immigrants take jobs away from U.S. citizens.
Protests have taken place in Los Angeles and more are expected across the US as young immigrants fight to keep protections President Donald Trump has vowed to scrap. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program protects those brought into the country illegally as children. Trump could still change his mind, but it's predicted he'll rescind the Obama-era scheme, giving Congress 6 months to draw up new legislation.
We are more than 800,000 individual recipients that we're brought to this country without our own consent or our own will. We pretty much just follow our parents. You know, they wanted to give us a better future in this country, something they couldn't afford back in Mexico.
DACA means a lot to me because it actually supports me to keep going to school, to prepare myself to become someone in the future. It gives us a permit to work, to go to school, because it is expensive and we do need that support. And for him to do it, it is really important for us to feel support from our president and from our country.
DACA protects around 800,000 young men and women, often referred to as dreamers. It was created by President Obama in 2012 after Congress failed to pass legislation that would have created a pathway for citizenship for undocumented youth.
Australia's High Court has begun hearing a legal challenge against the government's plan to hold a postal vote on whether to legalise same-sex marriage. The ruling centre-right coalition came up with the idea for the non-compulsory ballot after twice failing to get parliamentary support for a national referendum on the issue. Critics, including gay rights groups, are calling for just a conscience vote in Parliament to avoid divisive campaigning.
We hope the matter will go back to Parliament, and we hope finally our federal Parliament will stop delaying, stop dragging this out, and finally deliver on the settled will of the Australian people to allow all Australians to be able to marry the person they love in the country that they love.
Polls show more than 60% of Australians, including the Prime Minister, support same-sex marriage. But Malcolm Turnbull faces a revolt among the Conservative wing of his party if he goes back on a campaign pledge to hold a national ballot on the issue.
We demand equality!
And a court ruling against him could be destabilising for the government, which has a parliamentary majority of just one. Ballot papers are due to be sent out in a couple of weeks.
As North Korea pushes ahead with its missile tests, one expert warns that world powers should not only be considering sanctions against Pyongyang, but also dialogue before things get out of hand.
We should always take North Korea seriously. It's an authoritarian state led by a man who is brutal and authoritarian in his instincts and clearly dealing with some very dangerous weapons. That having been said, the regime is rational, and one hopes other actors, including Donald Trump, are similarly rational and recognize that nobody would gain from military action. It would be catastrophic for all sides, and ultimately it would lead to the destruction of North Korea. That fact, I think, should provide public opinion with some reassurance that we're not on the point, I think, of World War III. The risk in all of this is the risk of unanticipated escalation as this pattern of verbal brinkmanship continues, and both sides, particularly in Washington and Pyongyang, try to, if you like, have the final word.
The world has never seen.
Back.